And then he said, "I can't believe
That is hilarious. You have
It's late at night. Your room is quiet except for the soft sound of a song playing through your headphones. You're lying on your bed, staring at the ceiling while the same melancholic track loops again. The lyrics feel strangely familiar, almost as if the singer somehow understands a feeling you've never fully been able to explain. If someone walked into the room right now, they might not understand what you're doing. They might say something like, "Why are you listening to something so depressing?" Maybe they'd suggest putting on something upbeat instead. After all, in a world obsessed with positivity, playing sad music on repeat can seem like a strange habit. To many people, it looks like you're dwelling in your own misery. Some might even assume you're depressed, stuck in the past, or unable to move on from something painful. But what if that assumption is completely wrong? What if listening to sad music isn't a sign that something is broken inside you, but actually a sign of emotional depth? Over the past decade, psychologists and neuroscientists have started to uncover something fascinating about the people who are drawn to melancholic music. Far from being emotionally fragile, many of them share a surprising set of psychological traits linked to empathy, reflection, and emotional intelligence. In other words, that heartbreaking song you keep replaying might not be pulling you deeper into sadness. It might actually be helping your mind understand itself. We live in a culture that is deeply obsessed with happiness. Everywhere you look, the message is the same. Social media feeds are filled with smiling faces, motivational quotes, and constant reminders to stay positive. Self-help books promise that with the right mindset, you can turn any setback into an opportunity. Even casual conversations often include phrases like, "Look on the bright side," or "Everything happens for a reason." On the surface, this sounds supportive, but psychologists have started to notice a hidden problem behind this constant pressure to be upbeat. They call it toxic positivity. Toxic positivity is the belief that no matter how painful or complicated life becomes, you should always maintain a positive attitude. Sadness, frustration, grief, and anger are quietly pushed aside, as if these emotions are mistakes that need to be fixed as quickly as possible. But human emotions don't work like a light switch. When you're going through a breakup, feeling lonely, or carrying a quiet sense of loss, your brain is not looking for forced optimism. In fact, hearing something overly cheerful during those moments can feel strangely alienating. Instead of feeling comforted, you may feel misunderstood. Your mind is essentially saying, "That's not how I feel right now." This is exactly where sad music becomes powerful. A melancholic song doesn't try to correct your emotions. It doesn't rush you toward happiness or pretend everything is fine. Instead, it simply sits with you in that emotional space, acknowledging the reality of what you feel. And sometimes being understood is far more healing than being told to cheer up. One of the most powerful reasons people are drawn to sad music is something psychologists call emotional validation. Emotional validation simply means having your feelings acknowledged as real and understandable. When someone validates your emotions, they are not trying to fix you or rush you toward a different mood. Instead, they're quietly saying, "What you feel makes sense." And strangely enough, music can do this remarkably well. Imagine listening to a song where the lyrics describe the exact ache you've been carrying inside. Maybe it's about missing someone who is no longer part of your life. Maybe it's about feeling invisible in a crowded room, or realizing that something meaningful has quietly come to an end. In those moments, the song feels less like entertainment and more like a mirror. Psychologists often refer to this process as emotional mirroring. The music reflects your inner state back to you. Instead of feeling alone with your thoughts, you suddenly feel as if another human being, perhaps someone you've never even met, has already walked through the same emotional landscape. That realization can be surprisingly calming for the nervous system. Your brain begins to register a subtle but powerful message. I'm not the only person who has ever felt this way. Research on music and emotion suggests that this sense of shared human experience can significantly reduce feelings of isolation. The sadness in the song does not intensify your pain. Instead, it transforms that pain into something that feels understood, even communal. In a world where people are often encouraged to hide their struggles, sad music does something different. It allows emotions to exist without judgment. And sometimes, the simple act of hearing your own feelings echoed in a melody can be enough to make those feelings a little easier to carry. At first glance, the idea seems contradictory. If sadness is an unpleasant emotion, why would anyone willingly seek it out through music? Psychologists often refer to this phenomenon as the paradox of safe sadness. In real life, sadness is usually connected to something threatening or painful. Losing a relationship, facing rejection, or experiencing a deep disappointment all signal to the brain that something important has gone wrong. Because of this, real-life sadness often triggers stress responses. Your body becomes tense, your thoughts race, and your nervous system prepares to deal with the emotional impact of the situation. But sad music works very differently. When you listen to a melancholic song, your brain still recognizes the emotional signals associated with sorrow, the slow tempo, the minor chords, the fragile tone of a singer's voice. These cues activate emotional circuits in your brain that are similar to the ones involved in genuine grief. However, there is one crucial difference. There is no real-world threat attached to the experience. Nothing in your life is actually collapsing in that moment. You're simply sitting in a safe environment, exploring the feeling through sound. Your brain understands that the emotion is present, but the danger is not. This creates a unique psychological state where you can experience sadness without being overwhelmed by it. It is similar to watching a tragic movie or reading a deeply emotional novel. You may feel moved, even to the point of tears, yet a part of you remains aware that you're safe. In this sense, sad music becomes a kind of emotional rehearsal space. It allows you to approach complex feelings slowly, safely, and on your own terms. And paradoxically, by letting yourself feel sadness in a controlled environment, you often walk away feeling calmer, clearer, and more emotionally balanced than before. While sad music feels emotional and poetic on the surface, something very precise is happening inside your brain when you listen to it. Music doesn't just pass through your ears as sound. It activates a complex network of emotional and neurological systems that are responsible for how you process feelings. One of the key chemicals involved is prolactin. This hormone is often associated with caregiving and emotional comfort. In situations of grief or sadness, prolactin helps calm the body and reduce emotional distress. Interestingly, studies suggest that when people listen to melancholic music, their brain may release prolactin in anticipation of sorrow, almost as if the brain is preparing to soothe itself. At the same time, another hormone enters the picture, oxytocin, sometimes called the connection hormone. Oxytocin is linked to empathy, bonding, and emotional closeness. When a singer's voice carries vulnerability or pain, your brain responds as if it is witnessing another human being's emotional state. This can create a powerful sense of connection between the listener and the artist. And then there is dopamine, the brain's reward chemical. Even though the music may sound sad, the beauty of the melody, harmony, and storytelling activates the brain's reward system. In other words, your brain recognizes the emotional depth of the music as something meaningful and aesthetically satisfying. Together, these chemical responses create a fascinating emotional blend: sadness, comfort, connection, and pleasure, all happening at the same time. This is why people often cry while listening to a heartbreaking song, yet somehow feel better afterward. Psychologists call this process emotional catharsis, the safe release of built-up emotional tension. In many ways, your brain treats sad music like a gentle form of emotional therapy, guiding you through difficult feelings while quietly helping you recover from them. So who are the people most drawn to sad music? For a long time, many assumed they were simply more melancholic or emotionally fragile. But psychological research has revealed a very different picture. In fact, people who regularly enjoy sad music often score higher on a personality trait known as trait empathy. Empathy is the ability to understand and feel what another person is experiencing. It allows you to step outside of your own perspective and emotionally connect with someone else's inner world. When you listen to a singer's voice trembling with vulnerability, your brain does something remarkable. Instead of processing the sound as just another audio signal, it begins to simulate the emotional state behind the voice. This process is believed to involve what neuroscientists call the mirror neuron system. Mirror neurons activate when we observe or hear another person's emotional expression. In a sense, your brain briefly mirrors their feelings inside your own nervous system. When a singer expresses heartbreak, longing, or quiet despair, your mind partially recreates that emotional experience. For people with high empathy, this response can be especially strong. They don't just hear the song, they feel the emotional story unfolding within it. This ability often comes with other psychological traits as well. Highly empathic listeners tend to be more reflective, more imaginative, and more attuned to subtle emotional cues in the world around them. In everyday life, this sensitivity can sometimes feel overwhelming, but it also carries a powerful advantage. It allows a person to connect deeply with others, understand complex emotional situations, and experience art on a profoundly human level. In that sense, the love of sad music may not be a weakness at all. It may simply be the sound of a highly empathetic mind recognizing emotion when it hears it. Another reason sad music resonates so deeply with people is its powerful connection to nostalgia. Have you ever heard a song and suddenly felt transported back to a specific moment in your life? Maybe it was playing during a late-night drive years ago. Maybe it reminds you of a relationship that once meant everything. Or perhaps it brings back the feeling of being younger, when life seemed simpler and the future still felt wide open. Music has a unique ability to unlock memories because of how the brain processes sound and emotion. When you listen to a song, areas of the brain linked to memory, especially the hippocampus, become highly active. At the same time, the amygdala, which processes emotional meaning, helps reconnect those memories with the feelings that originally accompanied them. That's why a single melody can instantly reopen an entire chapter of your life. For a long time, psychologists believed nostalgia was mostly negative, something associated with longing for a past that can't return. But modern research has changed that view. Studies now show that nostalgia can actually serve an important psychological function. It helps people maintain a sense of continuity in their identity. By reconnecting with past experiences, your mind strengthens the story of who you are and how you became the person you are today. Sad music often becomes the soundtrack of these reflections. It allows you to revisit old memories without being trapped inside them. In this way, music acts almost like a time machine, not to escape the present, but to remind you of the emotional journey that brought you here. There is another fascinating question hidden inside all of this. If sadness is normally an unpleasant emotion, why does sad music often feel beautiful? Psychologists sometimes describe this experience as aesthetic sadness, the ability to appreciate the emotional depth of sorrow when it is expressed through art. In everyday life, sadness can feel heavy and overwhelming. But when that same emotion is shaped into music, something changes. It becomes meaningful. Part of this transformation comes from the structure of music itself. Many sad songs use minor keys, slower tempos, and gentle melodies that naturally evoke a reflective, emotional tone. These musical elements create a sense of vulnerability and openness, allowing listeners to connect with the emotional message without feeling threatened by it. But the beauty of sad music isn't just technical. It also comes from the honesty it carries. In a world where people often hide their struggles behind confident smiles and carefully curated lives, a truly melancholic song can feel disarmingly sincere. When an artist expresses heartbreak, longing, or quiet regret through their voice, it can feel like a rare moment of emotional transparency, and humans are naturally drawn to authenticity. We recognize something deeply human in those fragile moments. The sadness in the music reminds us that pain, love, loss, and longing are all part of the same emotional spectrum. That recognition can create a strange but powerful emotional response. The feeling that something sad can also be deeply beautiful, not because suffering is pleasant, but because truth often carries its own kind of beauty. Of course, like many psychological tools, sad music has a healthy side and an unhealthy one. The difference often comes down to a single concept: catharsis versus rumination. Catharsis happens when music helps you process emotions. You listen to a song, you allow yourself to feel the sadness it brings up, and gradually those emotions begin to move through you. Sometimes you might even cry. But afterward, something shifts. Your chest feels lighter, your thoughts feel clearer. The emotion has been acknowledged and released. Rumination works very differently. Instead of helping emotions move forward, rumination traps them in a loop. A person may replay the same sad song again and again, not to process the feeling, but to keep revisiting the same painful memory or thought. The mind begins circling around the same questions, the same regrets, the same what-ifs. Psychologists describe rumination as a mental pattern where attention becomes stuck on negative thoughts without moving toward resolution. Over time, this can intensify feelings of hopelessness or emotional exhaustion. One simple way to notice the difference is to pay attention to how you feel after the music ends. If you feel calmer, reflective, or emotionally released, the music likely served a healthy purpose. But if you feel more trapped in painful thoughts than before, your mind may have slipped into a rumination loop. Sad music is meant to help emotions breathe. But when it becomes a way of holding on to pain instead of releasing it, that's usually a sign that it may be time to step away from the headphones for a while. In the end, listening to sad music doesn't necessarily mean you're broken, dramatic, or stuck in the past. More often, it means you're someone who is willing to feel. In a world that constantly encourages people to hide discomfort and rush toward artificial positivity, allowing yourself to sit with real emotions is actually a rare kind of courage. Sad music simply creates a space where those emotions are allowed to exist without being rushed or judged. It becomes a mirror that reflects parts of the human experience we don't always talk about openly: loss, longing, vulnerability, and the quiet moments of reflection that shape who we are. For many people, that mirror is comforting. It reminds them that their feelings are not strange or isolated. They're part of a shared emotional landscape that connects millions of people across different lives, places, and stories. So the next time you find yourself replaying that one melancholic song late at night, remember this: you're not indulging in sadness. You might simply be listening to a part of your own inner world trying to speak. And now, I'm curious about you. What's the one sad song that always seems to understand you the most? Drop the title in the comments below and tell us why it matters to you. If this video made you feel seen or understood, consider subscribing to the channel and joining our community as we continue exploring the hidden psychology behind everyday emotions. Thank you for watching.